Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Desiree Cassell. I'm an orthopedic and pelvic floor physical therapist specializing in women's health, aka pelvic floor. I'm a wife, mom of 3, foodie, lover of all things movement and nature, and I'm super passionate about educating, empowering, and supporting other women like you to find and maintain balance throughout all aspects of their lives, without pain, pressure, or peeing their pants. And this is the Balanced Momtality Podcast, where we will talk about all things pelvic floor, your core, and optimizing your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery, providing you with the knowledge and tools so that you can feel like the strong, playful, and happy mom that you and your family deserve. Now let's get you out of those pads and back to loving movement. Fill up your water, pop in those AirPods, roll out your mat, and let's connect. Before we start today's episode, just a quick disclaimer that anything mentioned in this podcast is not meant to treat or diagnose any medical conditions. If you have any questions or concerns about your healthcare needs, please seek the care of your medical provider. This is also a safe space where we will be talking about very sensitive but important topics, such as issues with peeing and pooping, relationships, and even sex. So if you have littles around, probably a good idea to pop those AirPods in. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey girl, thanks for showing up for another week here on the Pelvic Floor Core and More show. This is episode 2 this week, so hopefully you caught Monday's episode because we have been in a little impromptu postpartum series, if you haven't noticed. Last week we talked a little bit about the behaviors, habits, patterns, and things that you probably aren't thinking about in that early 6-week phase postpartum that can really make or break your healing. So go check that out. But on Monday, we also dove into the exercises and movement and behaviors that you should be doing in those early 6 weeks, because waiting for that clearance at 6 weeks is usually the downfall, where we've waited too long and then we go back way too soon, right when we get that clearance, or maybe we actually started doing things early because we heard it wasn't a good idea to wait, but we did too much too soon. So to make sure you're not doing too much too soon, make sure you listen to the last couple episodes. But this episode is diving into more of that return to activity. This is after that 6-week mark. Maybe it's 8, 10, 12 weeks, right? Wherever you're ready and feeling like you want to start working out and exercising. This is where we need to make sure we have our boxes or our body in check, right? Before we just go back to running. It is not as simple as getting cleared and then being able to go on a run, because your provider is not checking the intensity or strength or capacity or motor control or pressure management or all of these things that really need to be in place before you go run. So just make sure you're aware that that clearance does not actually clear you to say your body is ready for this in a musculoskeletal way. Yeah, your body might not be bleeding anymore. Maybe your incisions and scars have healed, but that is all. It doesn't mean you're ready to go back to this crazy workout routine, or even sometimes walking is still too much at this stage. So we really need to understand our body's boundaries. But I also really want to advocate for getting that internal assessment from a pelvic floor PT after you get your 6-week clearance from your provider, because once you're cleared from the provider that all incisions and any infection or risk of hemorrhaging or any of those big red flag things are good, right? Like you did get cleared. Now you get to get the internal assessment from a pelvic floor PT that really dives into a lot more of how it's actually functioning, not just how the tissues are healing. And that is so important when it comes to what activity you can do. I have an awesome episode on the postpartum check and clearance for that. So go check that out, and I'll link that in the show notes for this episode. But just make sure you're advocating to get that assessment, because it can be so crucial in that healing process. But for today's episode, I want to just give you a little backstory of myself, because when I was 19, I got pregnant. I obviously had no idea what I was doing. I was fortunate because my mom had 7 kids. So I could ask her, I could ask my grandma. I had been around kids my whole life. So I had some awareness to how pregnancy and postpartum could look, but I really had no idea. And so I just relaxed. I took it easy those first 6 weeks. I got quote unquote cleared from my provider. I was still in college. I didn't even take a break. I had my daughter on Labor Day weekend, and I just took a couple weeks off and I hopped right back into my fall semester. Thankfully, it was all online, or that wouldn't have been possible. Man, that was not easy though. Anyways, I think that, that time at home, being home with a new baby and being in that postpartum phase, it was so nice to take online classes, but I was really getting this itch of wanting to work out and exercise, but I was just so busy, right? Like I had never had a baby. I was getting used to not only having a baby, but being a student with a baby, and it was just a lot. So I actually didn't go back into exercise very soon. In fact, I think I waited too long and could have been doing some stuff that was mellow in the meantime to prep my body, but I had no idea. So in the spring semester, when that came around and I could go back to in-person classes, I decided to sign up for a Pilates class because, that works the core. That has to get my core back, quote unquote, right? I was like, yeah, I'm going to go all into this Pilates class. I was also taking a weightlifting class at the time, and I was destined and so determined to feel strong and get my core back. However, this was a male instructor, which I'm just saying, right? Like they just don't get it, even if they think they do. And I even mentioned, I'm postpartum. I'm probably not going to be able to do all the things. And he was like, that's fine. Just do what you can, which is what we hear all the time from coaches, trainers, instructors, right? That's fine. Just do what you can. But what if we don't know what we can do, right? So we were doing so many V-sits, leg lifts, Russian twists, like hip circles, side planks, like all these high intense core bicycle, like just so many intense core workouts. And I was not aware that the entire time my core system was pressurizing into my linea alba, into my abs, and I caused a diastasis even 5 months postpartum. So we need to be careful. I also am curious if this is when my prolapse started to show up, but just hindsight's 2020, right? So I have an umbilical hernia, not only diastasis, but it caused a hernia through that space because I probably had a little diastasis, didn't even know that tissue never fully healed well. And then I went and did all these crazy, stupid core workouts that made it worse and caused a permanent damage through as a hernia in my core tissue. So learn from my mistakes, and we're going to get you back to loving movement, even running and jumping jacks and all those high intensity things if you want to, right? No pressure. Maybe you don't want to run or ever do jumping jacks again. That's fine too. But this is just to give you that reminder that it is a graded approach. We're not just going to jump right back in. Yes, our muscle holds memory, but our muscle also loses strength so fast. And when you lose strength, the body shows up differently based on what you have. So the first thing is really doing what I mentioned in the episode on Monday in those early 6 weeks, right? Hopefully those early 6 weeks, you are reconnecting your core. You're getting that pressure management and breathing pattern down. You are working on timing the breath with exhale during effort. You're not feeling any leaking or heaviness. You're starting to feel like you have some stability in your core. Maybe you've even started doing a little bridging, maybe some gentle core march, maybe some air squats. No way. Again, go listen to that episode. But these are just some foundational pieces that we need to have in play before we even attempt other types of exercise. We need to make sure your breath is good. We need to make sure your bracing is good. From the bottom up, we're coordinating that breath and brace so that we're not getting too much effort or pressure down on those effort moments. And then we also need to see how your body's recovering, because if it's feeling like crap, even from gentle things like that, it's still probably too much. So this is where guidance, and I am here to help guide you if you do need more of a hand-holding approach. But I hope this episode just helps give you guys some tips and some red flags to look out for. So obviously if you're leaking, it's not okay. So let's just dive in real quick to the body boundaries, and just to revisit those. Again, I have a whole episode on them, but this is the guidelines, right? The body boundaries is this term I've coined that really is just the signs and symptoms that your core is no longer really functioning well. And hello, if the goal is to get our core back, quote unquote, or maybe it was never there in the first place. Like I felt like once I really restored my core, I was like, oh, I've never actually had a strong connection to my core. So I just have my core now, and I'm still working on it. I've had procedures and surgeries in the last year, and I still have weakness that I'm recovering from. So we're going to have seasons in our lives where we might feel more connected than others, but this is how we get connected. And then we have to make sure we're listening to those symptoms to stop, because if we're not, that's when we can cause issues like I did. So body boundaries, quick recap. 3 P's: pain, peeing, and pressure. I was not aware of the pressure boundary. When you are engaging your core, everything should kind of cinch up and in towards the spine, up and in. You can see this really well during pregnancy because you can actually see the baby go up and in, right? The baby doesn't get pushed out. The baby doesn't drop. It's up and in. And it's that same sensation. We're trying to hug our core system up and in. And so when that pressure boundary fails, this shows up like that pressure blowing through, right? That abdominal wall actually pouches back out. It can look like doming or coning through the lineal elbow like mine was. I just wasn't aware that that wasn't a good thing, right? So I pushed through it, caused diastasis and a hernia. So we need to be aware. Peeing, pain, and pressure. If we're leaking at all, we're not doing it. If it hurts at all, we're not doing it. And if we're seeing pressure anywhere, like pressure into the belly, pressure down on pelvic floor, back pressure is changing, right? If you're doing exercises flat on your back, you should not feel your back arch off and round down unless you're doing something that's obviously doing that, like a sit-up. But let's be real, we should not be doing sit-ups early postpartum anyways, and even ways away postpartum. So just keep those exercises where we're not actually moving the trunk. We're trying to stabilize it. So that pressure should stay the same on your back, on your belly, into your pelvic bowl. So just be aware of those pressure boundaries. And then the other acronym is the ABCs. So alignment. This is talking about that stack of rib cage to pelvis, and also just reiterates that we're not moving them. We're trying not to crunch. We're trying not to arch. We're trying not to twist. We're trying to stabilize. And then B is the breath. Are we using our breath as we should? Are we optimizing it and timing it correctly through the appropriate phases of our exercises? Or are we holding our breath, right? Or maybe it's all shallow in our chest because we've braced. And C is core. Are you bracing your core? And it just overlaps and creates a nice ABC format. So 3 P's and ABCs. Go check that episode out if you want more of a deep dive, and definitely let me know if you want more on that, because inside Restore, I help you break down your body boundaries and actually get videos and pictures from you to really see your connection and see what your boundaries are that you're not listening to, and just help you reconnect and know and understand what your body is trying to tell you. But this is more to help you get an actual progression that supports your body and supports your healing and creates that stability that you're craving so desperately. I really felt like a loose bag of bones postpartum, and getting these core stability exercises in and getting my glutes stronger were such a huge part of that. So the big obvious things, like in terms of progression, obviously, we're not just going to do some bridges and some marching and feel really strong there and then decide to go run. Why? Let's think. Well, we were lying down, so this doesn't even take into account, can our body hold and connect standing up? But even if we were doing standing up elevated exercises, this doesn't take into account impact, single leg, coordination, right? So there are progressions here. We do start flat on the mat where we play around with horizontal exercises. Then we get you upright and look at how your core is doing upright. Maybe this even starts sitting if you can't really feel pelvic floor connection and standing, because yes, that's part of the boundary, guys. Bracing. We should feel that pelvic floor start the brace. If you don't feel that little lift when you're bracing and you're zippering up, or when you're exhaling during effort, it's too hard for you. And so if you don't feel it at all in standing, sit down. If you don't feel it at all in sitting, lie down. Take the weight off and see where you need to start. But then from there, we also have to start going from gentle, soft impact to more dynamic core intensity, right? Like we need to build in a little impact. We're not just going to do upright squats and then go run. We need to build this up. So we're talking light, gentle hops. Maybe we're playing around with narrow hop and a wide hop. Maybe we start playing around with a jump squat. Then we start playing around with like a running man in place. Then maybe we say, hey, how about we play around with some actual endurance and intervals, right? So let's walk. How does it feel while you're walking? What if we add it as an interval where we walk for a minute, jog for a minute? How does that feel? And you slowly increase that running interval if you're within your boundaries and everything is feeling good. But we need to make sure that the core is coordinating in these movements. And the other thing that we really miss here is single leg exercise, because with running especially, we really want to get in single limb stability and support. So a couple of my favorite ways to progress these exercises that you're doing are to add weight. Just make it harder. Make a bigger bang for your buck. Don't keep adding a 4th and 5th set unless you have time for that, right? Like just make it harder. Add weight. As long as you're within those body boundaries, right? But this is where guidance from someone like me can really help, because when we add weight, this is when we can start to see things fall apart because it might be too quick, too soon. So don't be too eager to add weight, but also once you feel confident that like the mind power isn't as hard because you don't have to think as hard about how am I bracing? Where did that pressure go? Where is my breath going? What effort phase do I exhale through? Where do I inhale through, right? The brain can kind of be the hardest part, the thought process, the motor control here. And once that mind quiets down and you can really embody those connections and you're like, oh yeah, I am just breathing and bracing and moving through this bridge, no problem. And I did 3 sets of 10 and okay, what's next, right? That's too easy. Now we need to make it harder. So add the weight. Don't be afraid. But the other way to progress is single leg. When we run, we are mostly on one leg. So we need to make sure we have that stability and control. So working on exercises like squats and deadlift and bridge and calf raises and working towards single leg. This also doesn't mean that you're just going from a squat to a single leg squat, but there is an in-between to help us get there, and it's called B stance. B stance is one of my favorite exercise variations. It's basically like a kickstand, and there are 3 exercises that are super crucial for runners to make sure you do have the strength in a single leg for them before we want to really clear you for running. And they are single leg squat. This is not a pistol squat. So when that leg that you're holding is straight out in front of you, that's a pistol squat. Not what we're doing here. We actually want to hold that leg back behind us, kind of like you were doing a lunge or the B stance, and holding it elevated there as you move through the squat. Because yes, B stands for squat. You're going to have that kickstand, one leg back behind you a little bit with weight on your toes. So your foot isn't even fully hitting the floor because we don't want you to really push through it. It's there just to keep you level. And if you don't know what this is, reach out. You could probably Google it and see. Brett Contreras is the glute guy, and he is awesome. He has a great Instagram account. I think it's even the glute guy, but so many awesome, great exercise options for glutes, and he goes over B stance a lot there. So just a great resource if you want good booty growth, because I love Brett Contreras' stuff. So single leg squat, single leg bridge or hip thrust, and for that one, the B stance leg is actually propped out in front of the other foot, and your weight is on your heel, not your toe. And then the other single leg one we want to do, I did mention deadlift, which is a good one, but I think it's more of a bonus because with running, the other third one we really want strong is single leg calf raises. Okay. Calf raises we need to work on because yes, we walk, but unless we're really training them or hiking hills or doing stairs all the time, we're kind of going with momentum. We're not really using our calves to progressively overload and make them stronger to the where they get fatigued and grow muscle mass. So start working a little bit on those 3 single leg exercises, but not too soon, right? We really want to make sure you're ready for those, which means you need to feel strong in those horizontal movements. You need to feel strong in those upright movements. You need to feel strong in a little bit of impact, and you can play around with impact and single leg at the same time. And in fact, I actually usually do B stance before we ever play around with impact, and single leg sometimes we do before I play around with impact as well. But the full ultimate goal is single leg impact, right? Like, can you hop on one foot? Looking at the whole leg. Obviously, we don't want to pee and have pain, but also, is your knee collapsing in? Is your foot collapsing in? Is your hip dropping on the side that you're not holding, right? Like, we need to make sure you have that stability on one foot and that we can coordinate it with your breathing. So try those out. But again, the signs that you're not ready for those progressions is the leaking, the heaviness, the doming, the back pain. Your nervous system is dysregulated. Maybe you're fatigued, you're exhausted all the time, you're high in anxiety. And if that's the case, the breath work is the main thing you need to work on. And I know I harped a lot about strength training and stability work in this episode, but just know that at the same time, we are working on the breath work still. We are working on soft tissue work and release work, because as we strengthen things up, this is when sometimes things get too tight because maybe they were already a little tight, especially pelvic floor. You can't really see it unless you've had an internal assessment or have been using a wand yourself. It is kind of hard to identify what is going on internally. And if you don't know and you go back into adding weight or going into impact too soon, this is when you can cause a lot of issues. So just make sure you're getting the proper guidance and support, and just know I'm here for you. Restore does give you the foundations. You do have access to me in that community privately as well as within the community chat. So I am there to help coach you through that. But if you want more one-on-one where it's just me and you, I'm walking through all of your barriers, your story, what your body specifically needs, what your body boundaries are specifically showing up as, that's where the one-on-ones are so invaluable. So please reach out. I'm here if you want any more support. Stay tuned on the Pelvic Floor Core and More show because we've got lots more coming for you. But otherwise, I hope this helped guide you a little bit more into how to get back into exercise, and just to know when it comes to running and high impact stuff, it takes time. We don't even want to start impact until around 18 to 20 weeks postpartum, you guys. And that's even if things have been going well. If things haven't been going well, we might not even do it then. It might be 30 weeks, 35 weeks. We need to see where you are at. Give your body grace, give it time to heal. Show up for the steps and you will get back into that movement. I promise. And if not, reach out so I can help you troubleshoot it and get back to doing the things that you love. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you've got so many other important things going on, but I hope it was helpful and you leave here with some tools to help you in your healing journey. And I just want to ask you, if you have found this helpful, to please leave a review on iTunes. Scroll down to the bottom of my podcast page and leave that 5-star review so it can help other women see this information. And also, if you want to be a part of my community of amazing women trying to balance all the things, great tips and insight and sharing stories and just motivating each other along the way, feel free to join my Facebook group, The Balanced Momtality Wellness and Support. I hope to see you here next time on the Balanced Momtality Podcast.